Hey there, it's Dr. Guerrero. I'm going to review us for the week 8 anatomy quiz. The topics are the cardiovascular system and lymphatics. So I've already done some pre-work on this review to get it set up. I put cardiovascular system. Remember, with every system, we need to know the functions of it and the organs associated. Then in the notes that I post, chapter 18, I found this diagram, which I believe will be helpful in studying. So I've gotten this out of the chapter 18, the cardiovascular system, and then I have a lymphatic system and just basic function and organs. And I went into the chapter 20 notes that I posted and pulled this diagram because it shows the lymphatic layout and it shows also the vessels that they run alongside. So I put both of those just as pre-work, Carter, to lay out the review. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and specifically address cardiovascular system first, and then I'll come back and we'll do lymphatics. So to begin with, you need to know the blood flow through the body. And when I say body, I mean heart as well. So if you watch the lecture that I posted, I say right lungs, left body, right lungs, left body. And this diagram here also depicts that. So blood flow through the body, through the heart. Key terms that are going to show up: superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, pulmonary sinus, pulmonary veins, and by pulmonary sinus, I mean, and I apologize, coronary sinus. You need to know the right atria, so right and left atria, which is plural for atrium, and the right and left ventricle. Okay, and again, it's all, so you know these parts, but it's all going to come back to the blood flow. So make sure you know the details of how blood circulates. You still within the cardiovascular system, you need to be familiar with the papillary muscles, the pectinate muscles, just within the heart, and the trabecular carne. These are all these are all anatomical structures. You need to know what happens during systole. Systole might also be systolic, so I just want to make sure that you see that. In diastole or diastolic. Okay, so making sure you know those, and you might hear atrial systole or atrial diastole, ventricular systole, ventricular diastole. So making sure you're familiar with what those are and what occurs during those. All right. That is, you need to know the components of blood. So whenever you say blood, people just think it's like a liquid, but blood has 4 components. It has the plasma and then the formed elements, but there are 3 formed elements. There are erythrocytes. Sorry. Leukocytes and thrombocytes. So knowing about the components of blood and their composition. That is blood flow. You need to know what hematocrit is. Spell that wrong. Whenever blood is centrifuged, it's centrifuge blood. The makeup, or technically the breakdown. So centrifugation is when it's done really quickly so that the formed elements separate out and there's different layers. Make sure that you are familiar with those components. This is kind of blood in lymphatics. So I'm going to keep it with lymphatics on that one. Make sure for cardiovascular, you need to know the femoral arteries. And when I say know those, know their location, and then know what they serve. And of course, they're arteries, so you need to be sure you know which direction they flow. And you need to know the iliac arteries. When you are talking about the heart specifically, I need to know the serous membrane, or you need to know the serous membrane that surrounds the heart, and any of it. So when we talked about serous membranes, we said visceral, parietal, the fluid, but there's a specific name for the serous membrane associated with the heart. You're familiar with that? You also need to be familiar, excuse me, with the terms epicardium, myocardium, endocardium. I said that. Yeah. With the heart, so up here I said atria and ventricles. You need to know the atrioventricular valves. And if you've paid attention in lectures, you need to know all the names. So there's the right and the left, and then there's other names for them as well. So atrioventricular, and again, just using logic, common sense, atrioventricular tells you that these are valves that are located between the atria and the ventricles. On that same note, and just in case when you're looking through, just to make sure you have them, there's two aventricular valves. There's also two semilunar valves. And they're either called the semilunar valves or there's another name associated. So you know the names as well, and the locations. All right. I said that. Okay. These are some developed terms associated with the heart, meaning that the developmental means as the heart is developing. So that would be in utero. Okay. There is the umbilical vein. So that obviously tells you that it's in utero. The foramen, oval, and lupus arteriosus. So that. Okay. So I'm going to finish on the cardiovascular, but I want to bring up on the formed elements. I mentioned erythrocytes, leukocytes, and I spelled that wrong. Thrombocytes. You need to know what each of these are, okay? And technically, so I'm going to put them back over here again. And there are 5 types of leukocytes. and then thrombocytes. These types of cells are located, they're part of the cardiovascular system because they're formed elements in the blood. But like the leukocytes are really in the thrombocytes, might be active in the lymphatic system as well. Okay, so that's why these are kind of tied together. So you're going to hear me mention that again. So about the erythrocytes as what they are, they're cellular components like developmental. In the blood chapter, and I don't have those notes up and I didn't pull that diagram, but it does distinguish between each of these. There's a diagram. In fact, let me just give me a second. I know that I should have, it's chapter 17 in the notes that I've posted, or it's the chapter called the blood. And I know that there's just a really awesome diagram in there that I think would be beneficial for you in referencing these elements. That's actually a really good chapter. A few questions on this quiz, but let me find the diagram I'm speaking of. Getting closer. Okay, I'm getting closer. Here it is. Let me get this, let me get this. These right here are specific, this diagram right here is specific to the leukocytes, and I find it to be very good when you're studying leukocytes. I see, sweet boy. Let me put it here. There, and I would also use this in the lymphatic system as well because these are talking about the different types of leukocytes. So you can see that. And there is also another diagram, and I'm not going to spend time, although I really want to, looking for it, that distinguishes between the erythrocytes and thrombocytes as well. So this is a good diagram for the leukocytes. Right here, I just want to explain this diagram real quick. Everything in red is oxygen rich. Everything in blue is oxygen poor. So it could be an artery or vein, but by definition, arteries are traveling away from the heart, veins travel towards the heart. So it's incorrect to believe that if it's red, it's an artery, because it doesn't necessarily have to be, okay? So just making sure that you're paying attention to the terms, and the terms tell you which that they're going. All right. Let me get back to the view. Close this. Okay. Now to the lymphatic system. Not that y'all care, and I'm sorry for all the sound outside, but there's a birthday parade going for my neighbor next door. So that's what all the honking and stuff is. All right, lymphatic system. All right. You need to know what leukemia is. You need to know what anemia is. You need to know what thrombocytopenia is. Polycythemia. You need to know what a neutrophil is. Eosinophil, or eosinophil. I think I'm spelling it. Lymphocyte. And there are two types of lymphocytes, so make sure you can distinguish those. Okay. So that already said that. I listed up here, you need to know the organs of the lymphatic system, so make sure you know those. So a lot of the lymphatic system doesn't necessarily have organs, but it could also be glands. So, oh, dang it. Just close out of your quiz. 1 second. So make sure you're familiar with that. See, and the test is more heavily weighted, or the quiz this week is more heavily weighted on cardiovascular than it is lymphatic, but nonetheless. Okay, and I think, did I say basophils? I did not say basophils, so let me go back. And did I say neutrophils? Yeah, good. Okay. All right. I think that this review right here is going to be enough to get you prepared for the week 8 quiz. So I'm going to scroll through it slowly for you. Again, cardiovascular and lymphatics are the topics. And for those of you who have been working with me over the past few test reviews, you should kind of be getting in the groove of how to do this and how to prepare test review for yourself. The reason why I say that is because I'm trying to build your base right here so that as you move on to other classes, you're more familiar with how to study and you can become more independent, because again, instructors are not required at the collegiate level to provide any type of formal review. Okay, so my goal is that you slowly kind of get the idea of how to study and we start building these good. All right, that is the review for the chapter 8 quiz in anatomy. And I hope that you have a good day. Happy studying. And that's